The giant space station floated in the darkness around the gas planet Valros Prime. Its crystal walls sparkled with lights from 1,000 different worlds. Inside the main hall, creatures from across the galaxy sat in their floating chairs. Some had blue skin and 4 arms. Others looked like walking trees with silver leaves. A few were made of pure energy, glowing like small suns. At the front of the room stood Speaker Velthar. He was tall and thin, with purple skin that seemed to shine. His voice echoed through the hall as he spoke to the assembled delegates. "My fellow council members," Velthar said, raising his long arms, "we gather today to discuss the human problem. These young creatures have become too bold. They dare to expand beyond their small corner of space." High Commander Zekmoth stepped forward. His body was covered in dark metal plates and his red eyes glowed like fire. "The humans have taken 3 more star systems this year. Wolf 359 Tau Ceti, and now they eye the Vega system. This cannot continue." The delegates murmured agreement. Some clicked their claws on their chairs. Others made high-pitched sounds that meant they were angry. Captain Hyunwoo Kim stood at the back of the room with the other humans. He wore a simple blue uniform with silver stripes. Next to him, Ambassador Sujin Park kept her face calm, but her hands were tight fists. Communications Officer Jin-Ho Lee watched everything with careful eyes. "The humans are children playing with fire," said a delegate with tentacles for arms. "They have been in space for only 200 years. We have ruled for 3,000. Their ships are made of simple metal," added another voice. "They use chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. Primitive technology." High Commander Zekmoth activated a hologram in the center of the room. It showed human ships floating in space. The ships looked rough and gray with big engines and thick armor. They had no elegant curves or glowing parts like council ships. "Look at their weapons," Zekmoth said with a laugh. "They shoot pieces of metal at each other. They have no energy shields, no plasma cannons, no antimatter bombs. How can such backward creatures think they can challenge us?" The hologram changed to show human soldiers. They wore bulky suits with thick helmets. Their weapons looked heavy and crude compared to the energy weapons of other species. "Their warriors need air to breathe," said a floating jellyfish-like creature. "They require food and water every day. They cannot survive in the vacuum of space without their suits. How weak they are." Many delegates made sounds of amusement. Some actually laughed out loud. Ambassador Sujin stepped forward. Her voice was steady and strong. "Honored council members, we request permission to speak." Speaker Velthar looked down at her with eyes that showed no kindness. "Very well, human. You may speak, but be brief. We have important matters to discuss after we deal with your people." Sujin walked to the center of the room. The lights made her look small and alone among all the alien creatures. "The colonies we have settled are necessary for our survival. Earth can no longer support all our people. The environment is damaged. Billions need new homes. Your problems are not our concern," said a creature that looked like a walking crystal. "You expanded too quickly. Now you must face the consequences." "We followed all the proper procedures," Sujin continued. "We filed claims, waited for approval, paid the required fees. These colonies are legally ours." "Legal by old laws," Zekmoth growled. "Laws made before we understood how dangerous young species can become. New rules are needed." Captain Hyunwoo watched as more delegates joined the conversation. All of them spoke as if humans were not even worth worrying about. They talked about humanity like they were discussing insects or small animals. "The Catherian Empire suggests a simple solution," said a tall figure made of what looked like liquid silver. "Give the humans 72 hours to abandon their outer colonies. If they refuse, we will remove them by force." "An excellent idea," Velthar agreed. "We will be merciful. They may keep their home system and 3 nearby worlds. Anything beyond that must be given up." Sujin's voice became harder. "Those colonies have 40 billion people living on them. Families, children, entire communities. You cannot simply order them to leave their homes." "They should have thought of that before expanding beyond their means," said the crystal creature. 40 billion is a small price to pay for galactic peace." Jin-Ho Lee stepped up next to his captain. He whispered something in Hyunwoo's ear. The captain's eyes went wide for just a moment, then returned to normal. "Furthermore," Zekmoth continued, "humanity must accept tributary status. You will provide resources and technology to the Council. Your military will be limited to system defense only. No more expansion. No more independent action." "This is slavery," Sujin said quietly. "This is survival," Velthar replied. Accept our generous terms, or we will be forced to take stronger action. The choice is yours. The hologram changed again to show the Council fleet. Hundreds of beautiful ships floated in perfect formations. Their hulls gleamed with energy fields. Weapon ports glowed with barely contained power. Each ship looked like a work of art that could destroy planets. Our fleet has never known defeat, Zekmoth said with pride. 90 ships of the line, each one worth 100 of your primitive vessels. We offer this demonstration not as a threat, but as a kindness. We want you to understand the reality of your situation. Captain Hyunwoo finally spoke. His voice was calm and respectful. We will need time to consider your offer. 72 standard hours, Velthar declared. Not 1 minute more. After that time expires, we will assume you have chosen the path of resistance. Ambassador Sujin bowed slightly. We understand your position. We hope you will understand ours when we give our answer. The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit. None of the council members paid attention to them anymore. They were already discussing which ships would be needed to destroy the human colonies. As they walked through the corridors of the station, Jin-Ho leaned close to his captain. Sir, I'm picking up those strange signals again. The ones from the edge of the system. Understood, Hyunwoo replied quietly. Continue monitoring. Sujin heard them but said nothing. She just smiled a very small smile that no alien would have understood. Behind them, the council continued planning humanity's surrender, never imagining that their 3,000-year reign was about to end in the most spectacular way possible. 72 hours passed like a countdown to war. The human diplomatic ship Soul's Pride floated near the council station, looking tiny next to the alien vessels that surrounded it. Inside the ship, Captain Hyunwoo Kim sat in his command chair, watching the timer on his screen reach 0. Time's up, Captain, said Communications Officer Jin-Ho Lee from his station. The council is requesting our answer. Hyunwoo looked around his small bridge. The walls were made of simple metal painted white. The computers used basic screens instead of fancy holograms. Everything looked plain compared to the advanced technology of the council ships outside. Open a channel to the council station, he ordered. Jin-Ho's fingers moved across his keyboard. Channel open, sir. The main screen lit up with the face of Speaker Velthar. Behind him, other council members gathered to hear humanity's surrender. High Commander Zekmoth stood beside the speaker, his metal armor gleaming under the station's lights. Human vessel. Velthar said in his cold voice, Your time has expired. What is your decision? Captain Hyunwoo stood up slowly. He straightened his blue uniform and looked directly into the camera. Speaker Velthar, honored council members, we have considered your terms carefully. And? Zekmoth demanded, his red eyes glowing brighter. We respectfully decline your offer, Hyunwoo said simply. The silence that followed was complete. Even the background hum of the ship's engines seemed to stop. On the screen, Velthar's purple face showed shock, then anger. You dare to refuse us? The speaker finally said. Do you not understand what this means? We understand perfectly, Ambassador Sujin Park said as she joined the captain on screen. We also understand that 40 billion innocent people cannot be abandoned. We will not sacrifice our colonies to satisfy your desire for control. Zekmoth stepped forward, his metal body making grinding sounds. Then you have chosen death. Your primitive species will learn what happens when children challenge their betters. The communication cut off. Through the bridge windows, the crew of Soul's Pride could see the council ships beginning to move. Their sleek hulls started glowing with energy as weapon systems came online. Captain, called out Lieutenant Bo Young Nam from the tactical station. I'm reading massive power buildup from the Council Dreadnought Eternal Dominion. They're targeting us. Hyunwoo nodded calmly. Maintain position. Do not raise shields or power weapons, sir. Bo Young looked confused. They're going to fire on us. I know, the captain said. Jin-Ho, any word from command? Jin-Ho was bent over his equipment, listening to signals that only he could hear. Still picking up those quantum disturbances at the system's edge, Captain. They're getting stronger. On the Council flagship, High Commander Zekmoth gave his orders. Target the human ship, one shot to vaporize them completely. Let this be a lesson to any who would defy the Council. The Eternal Dominion was a beautiful ship, all flowing curves and glowing energy conduits. It was 3 times larger than the human vessel, and armed with weapons that could crack moons. As it turned toward Soul's Pride, its plasma batteries began to charge with power drawn from a miniature star contained in its core. Weapons locked on target, reported the Catherian weapons officer. Ready to fire on your command. Zekmoth raised his armored hand. Around him, other council officers watched with satisfaction. This would be quick and clean, one shot, and the human problem would begin to solve itself. Aboard Soul's Pride, the bridge crew felt the targeting lasers painting their ship. Red lights danced across their hull as the council ship prepared to fire. Incoming targeting scan, Bo Young reported, her voice tight with stress. They have weapon lock. Steady, Captain Hyunwoo said. All hands prepare for impact. But Jin Ho suddenly looked up from his station, his eyes wide with excitement. Captain! The quantum disturbances just spiked off the charts. Something big is coming through hyperspace. Ambassador Su Jin, who had been quiet during all of this, finally smiled. Right on time. She activated the ship's communication system and sent a message to the council fleet. Her voice was calm and clear, like someone announcing dinner was ready. Council vessels, this is Ambassador Su Jin Park of the Human Diplomatic Corps. You have chosen to threaten civilians and diplomatic personnel under a flag of truce. This action constitutes an act of war under interstellar law. You have been warned. High Commander Zekmoth laughed, the sound echoing through his ship's bridge. Warn us? You are about to be destroyed by a single shot from our weakest weapon. What can your pathetic species do to threaten the mighty council? On the council station, delegates gathered around viewing screens to watch the demonstration. They expected to see the human ship turned into glowing vapor in seconds. Some even placed bets on how many pieces it would break into. Fire, Zekmoth commanded. But before the Eternal Dominion could discharge its weapons, space itself began to change at the edge of the star system. Reality twisted and bent like fabric being stretched. Stars seemed to move in impossible directions. Energy readings spiked beyond anything the council sensors had ever recorded. Sir, called out a Catherian sensor officer, I'm reading massive hyperspace distortions. Multiple contacts incoming. Ignore it, Zekmoth snarled. Probably some merchant convoy running late. Fire on the human ship! The plasma cannons of Eternal Dominion finally discharged, sending bolts of pure energy, racing toward Soul's Pride. The beams were so bright they lit up the entire area like artificial suns. But the shots never reached their target. Space tore open like someone ripping paper. A hole in reality appeared directly between the council ship and the human vessel. The plasma bolt struck something invisible and simply disappeared, their energy absorbed by forces beyond understanding. Then the hole grew wider and wider. What emerged from that tear in space made every council member forget about the small human ship entirely. Ships, not one or two, but dozens. Then hundreds. They poured out of the hyperspace rift in perfect formation, each one larger and more impressive than anything in the council fleet. At their head came a vessel that dwarfed even the mighty Eternal Dominion. It was 4 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that seemed to bend light around them. Jinho stared at his instruments in amazement. Captain, I count 127 ships, all human registry. The flagship is identifying itself as Indomitable Spirit, Admiral Taehyun Choi commanding. The council bridge fell silent. On every ship in their fleet, officers stared at their screens in disbelief. These were not the primitive human vessels they had been shown in intelligence reports. These ships gleamed with advanced technology. Their hulls seemed to be made of materials that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. Energy signatures showed power sources that shouldn't exist. Impossible, whispered Zekmoth. Our intelligence said they were primitives. These ships, they're more advanced than ours. A new voice came over all communication channels. It was calm, professional, and absolutely cold. Council vessels, this is Admiral Taehyun Choi of the Human Defense Fleet Pacific Command. You have just fired on diplomatic personnel under a flag of truce. This constitutes an act of war under interstellar law. You will stand down your weapons immediately and prepare to be boarded. Speaker Velthar found his voice at last. This is impossible. You were supposed to be primitives. Admiral Choi's image appeared on screens throughout the council fleet. He was an older man with gray hair and eyes like ice. Behind him, the bridge of Indomitable Spirit showed technology that made council systems look ancient. We let you believe what you wanted to believe, the Admiral said simply. Now you will learn the cost of your arrogance. Stand down, or face the consequences. High Commander Zekmoth's pride finally overcame his shock. Never, council ships, attack formation. Destroy them all! Admiral Choi sighed like a teacher disappointed with a slow student. So be it. The space around Velros Prime had become a theater of war. On one side, the Council fleet arranged itself in their traditional battle formation. 89 ships of different sizes and shapes, each one beautiful and deadly. Their energy weapons glowed like stars, and their shields shimmered with power drawn from exotic matter cores. On the other side, the human fleet hung in space like a wall of dark metal. 127 ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with perfect precision, as if controlled by a single mind. Aboard the human flagship Indomitable Spirit, Admiral Tae-hyun Choi studied the tactical displays with calm eyes. His bridge was larger than the entire human diplomatic ship, filled with officers working at stations that hummed with quiet efficiency. Fleet status report, he ordered. Lieutenant Bo-young Nam, now revealed as the fleet's primary tactical officer, read from her displays. All ships report ready for combat, Admiral. Weapon systems charged, defensive fields active, drone squadrons prepared for launch. Enemy disposition? 89 Council vessels in standard attack formation. They're trying to use their numerical advantage to surround us. She paused. Sir, they're still using old battle tactics. Nothing we haven't seen before. Chief Engineer Dongmin Seo looked up from his station. Admiral, the Council ships are using antimatter containment systems that are at least 50 years out of date. Their shield generators are working at maximum capacity just to maintain defensive screens. And their weapons? Plasma cannons, particle beams, some basic kinetic systems. Nothing that should penetrate our defensive fields. Admiral Choi nodded slowly. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but the Council had made their choice. All ships, this is Admiral Choi. Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Show them what humanity has learned. On the Council flagship Eternal Dominion, High Commander Zekmoth watched the human ships with growing unease. They weren't moving like primitive vessels. There was something wrong with their formation, something that made his battle-trained instincts scream warnings. Tactical analysis, he demanded. Sir, said his weapons officer, the human ships are using an unknown formation. Our computers can't predict their attack patterns. Their energy signatures don't match our intelligence files, added the sensor operator. These ships are producing power levels that should be impossible with their technology base. Zekmoth snarled. Intelligence was wrong. But it doesn't matter. We have superior numbers and 3,000 years of military experience. Attack! The Council fleet moved forward like a tide of destruction. Their ships were works of art, all flowing lines and graceful curves. Weapons ports opened like flowers blooming, revealing the deadly energy cannons within. But the human fleet did something unexpected. Instead of meeting the attack head-on, they simply vanished. What? Zekmoth stared at his displays in shock. One moment, over 100 human ships had been there. The next, empty space. Sir, they're not showing on any sensors, reported his tactical officer. It's like they just disappeared. Then space began to twist again, but this time it was different. Instead of the large rift that had brought the fleet, dozens of smaller holes opened all around the Council formation. Human ships phased back into normal space, appearing exactly where they wanted to be. The Indomitable Spirit materialized directly above the Council flagship, so close that crew members could see each other through the viewports. Other human vessels appeared behind, beside, and below the Council ships, perfectly positioned for devastating attacks. Impossible, whispered Zekmoth. Ships can't just teleport through space. Admiral Choi's voice came over the communication system again. You assumed we were using the same technology, you understand. You assumed wrong. Captain Wu Jin Kang's escort carrier Busan's Revenge hung in space between two Council cruisers. Instead of launching fighters, it opened bays that released clouds of small objects that looked like metal insects. Drone squadrons away, reported Weapons Officer Mi Young-yoon from her station aboard the flagship. All units show green status and full AI connectivity. The drones moved through space with impossible grace. Each one was controlled not by a single human pilot, but by advanced AI systems based on the neural patterns of humanity's greatest warriors. They flew in perfect coordination as if they shared a single mind. Jaemin Park, Sun-hee Kim, and Young-soo Han were not people anymore, but AI constructs that lived in the ship's computers. They had volunteered for the neural scanning process that copied their minds into digital form. Now they flew 1,000 drone bodies at once, each one an extension of their consciousness. The Council ships fired everything they had. Plasma beams cut through space, particle cannons discharged deadly energy, and kinetic weapons sent metal slugs racing toward human targets. For a moment, the area around Valros Prime lit up like a miniature galaxy. But the human ships were no longer where the weapons were aimed. They phased in and out of normal space, appearing just long enough to fire their own weapons before vanishing again. And when they did fire, the results were devastating. Weapons Officer Mi Young-yoon had trained for this moment her entire life. Her fingers danced across controls that interfaced directly with her thoughts, the main batteries of indomitable spirit charged with power, drawn from dimensions beyond normal space. "Firing," she announced. Calmly, the weapon that emerged from the flagship's primary cannon didn't look like anything the Council had ever seen. It wasn't a beam of energy or a projectile. It was more like a hole in reality itself. A tunnel through space that connected the human ship directly to its target. The Council cruiser Righteous Victory simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized. It was there one moment and gone the next, as if it had never been built. The matter that had composed its hull and crew was converted directly into energy and channeled into parallel dimensions. "Direct hit on Target 7, reported Tactical Officer Bo Young. "Complete molecular dispersal achieved." Around the battlefield, other human ships were demonstrating equally impossible weapons. Kinetic projectiles that moved at significant fractions of light speed, tearing through Council shields like paper. Energy weapons that seemed to ignore defensive systems entirely, striking targets through dimensions that Council science didn't understand. The drones from Captain Wu Jin's carrier swarmed over a Council battleship like metal locusts, but instead of firing conventional weapons, they simply touched the enemy hull and began to change it. Nanomachines flowed from the drones, converting the Council ship's armor into more drones, more weapons, more tools of destruction. "Sir," called out Drone Coordinator Hye-jin Cho, "the Glorious Authority is showing complete system failure. Their own hull is being turned against them." Shield Technician Kyung-soo Jang monitored the defensive systems. "All human vessels report 0 damage, Admiral. Council weapons can't penetrate our dimensional barriers. The Council fleet, built over 3 millennia of military supremacy, was being torn apart by forces they couldn't understand or counter. Ships that had conquered 1,000 worlds were reduced to scrap metal in minutes. High Commander Zekmoth watched his fleet die around him. Ships exploded without warning. Others simply disappeared. A few tried to retreat, only to find human vessels appearing in their path no matter which direction they fled. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" Intelligence Officer Shung-ho Lim monitored Council communications from his station. "Admiral, enemy forces are attempting to coordinate a retreat. Several ships are trying to break away from the engagement." "Let them go," Admiral Choi ordered. "We need survivors to carry the message back to their leaders." Navigation Specialist Yoon-ji Song looked up from her displays. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple quantum tunnels opening near the system's edge. It looks like Council reinforcements are trying to arrive." "How many ships?" "Approximately 200 vessels, Admiral. They're coming through hyperspace from at least 6 different star systems." Admiral Choi smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Excellent. Now we can show them the full extent of human capabilities." The reinforcements arrived to find their original fleet already defeated. Debris from destroyed Council ships drifted through space like metallic snow. The human fleet hung in perfect formation, not a single vessel damaged or destroyed. And waiting for them were weapons and technologies that would make the Council's 3,000-year reign seem like ancient history. The battle for Valros Prime was over. The war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. The reinforcement fleet from the Council's core worlds dropped out of hyperspace expecting to join a glorious battle. Instead, they found a graveyard. Pieces of Council ships drifted through space like broken toys. The proud vessels that had maintained galactic order for 3,000 years were nothing but twisted metal and fading energy. Signature's Admiral Veltros commanded the reinforcement fleet from his flagship Divine Authority. He was a veteran of 100 campaigns, a Catherian warrior who had never known defeat. His ship was the largest vessel the Council had ever built, armed with weapons that could shatter planets. "What happened here?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Sir, it appears the advance fleet engaged the human vessels and was completely destroyed," I count debris from at least 60 ships. 60 ships destroyed by a primitive human fleet? Veltros couldn't believe what he was seeing. Where are the humans now? Dead ahead, sir. They're maintaining formation around the gas giant. On the main display, the human fleet hung in space like dark predators. They showed no damage. No sign that they had just fought the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Instead, they waited with the patience of hunters who knew their prey was approaching. Aboard Indomitable Spirit, Admiral Tae-hyun Choi studied the new arrivals with calm interest. Fleet composition analysis, he ordered. Lieutenant Bo Young Nam read from her tactical displays. 212 vessels, Admiral. Mix of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. The flagship appears to be a super dreadnought class approximately 6 kilometers in length. Armament? Standard Council weapons, but in much greater quantities. The flagship alone mounts over 300 weapon systems. Chief Engineer Dongmin Seo shook his head. They still don't understand, do they? They think bigger guns and more ships will make the difference. No, Admiral Choi replied quietly. They understand perfectly. They're desperate. This is everything the Council can throw at us. If they lose here, their empire falls apart. Admiral Veltros opened communications with the human fleet. His image appeared on screens throughout the human formation, showing a tall figure in ceremonial armor that glittered with precious metals. Human vessels, I am Admiral Veltros of the Council Grand Fleet. You have committed acts of war against the lawful government of this galaxy. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift. Admiral Choi's response was broadcast back to the Council fleet. His voice remained as calm as if he were ordering dinner. Admiral Veltros, you are trespassing in human space. The system of Valros Prime is now under the protection of the Human Defense Fleet. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Human space? Veltros laughed, the sound echoing through his bridge. You have been in space for barely 2 centuries. We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. You will learn your place. The Council fleet began to advance. 200 ships moving in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and weapon systems that hummed with contained power. They were beautiful vessels, each one a masterpiece of engineering and art. But beauty meant nothing in war. Captain Wu Jin Kang watched the approaching Council fleet from the bridge of Busan's Revenge. His escort carrier had been modified for this battle, carrying weapons that the Council couldn't imagine. Launch all squadrons, he ordered. The carrier's bays opened, releasing clouds of objects that looked like silver insects. But these were not the simple drones from the first battle. These were hunter-killers, each one equipped with AI systems that learned and adapted in real time. The drones flew straight toward the Council fleet, moving faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. They phased in and out of normal space, appearing inside Council ships without warning. What are those things? Admiral Veltros demanded as alarms began sounding throughout his fleet. Unknown contacts, sir. They're inside our ships somehow, bypassing all our defenses. The drones didn't explode or fire weapons. Instead, they began to take apart the Council ships from the inside. Molecular disassemblers turned hull plating into raw materials. Nanomachines converted weapon systems into more drones. Computer viruses spread through alien networks like digital plague. Weapons Officer Mi Young-yoon coordinated the attack from Indomitable Spirit. Her displays showed the progress of the assault in real time. Drone swarms have penetrated 40% of enemy vessels, Admiral. Conversion process is proceeding ahead of schedule. Sir, called out Drone Coordinator Hye-jin Cho from Captain Wu Jin's ship. The AI constructs report they're learning Council technology in real time. They're already developing countermeasures for every system they encounter. The AI minds of Jaemin Park, Sun Hee Kim, and Young Soo Han existed in thousands of drone bodies now. They flew through Council ships like digital ghosts, absorbing information and adapting their tactics with each passing second. Admiral Veltros watched his fleet begin to fall apart. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being destroyed by tiny machines they couldn't even target effectively. All ships, emergency protocols, he ordered. Initiate quantum sterilization fields. Destroy the drones at any cost. Some Council ships began activating their most desperate weapons. Quantum fields that tore apart matter at the subatomic level, spread through their hulls. It was a last resort that would kill their own crews, but it might stop the human drones. It didn't work. Impossible, whispered SHIELD technician Kyung-soo Jang as he watched his instruments. The drones are adapting to quantum disruption fields faster than the Council can deploy them. Navigation specialist Yoon Ji-song looked up from her station. Admiral, several Council ships are trying to ram us. They've abandoned all other tactics. Let them come, Admiral Choi replied. Activate the displacement fields. The Council ships that tried ramming attacks found themselves flying through empty space. The human vessels had shifted into parallel dimensions, existing in the same location, but separated by barriers that conventional matter couldn't cross. Meanwhile, the human weapons were demonstrating capabilities that broke the Council's understanding of physics. Energy cannons that fired through folded space, hitting targets on the other side of the battlefield. Kinetic weapons that created their own ammunition from the quantum foam of empty space. Direct hit on enemy flagship, reported Tactical Officer Bo Young. Their shields are failing. Admiral Veltros felt his great ship shudder as human weapons tore through its defenses. The Divine Authority had been designed to be unsinkable, protected by the most advanced technology the Council possessed. But the human weapons seemed to ignore every defensive system. Damage report, he shouted over the sound of alarms. Primary shields down, sir. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 15. Main power fluctuating. We're losing antimatter containment in Reactor 2. Through his viewports, Veltros could see other Council ships dying around him. Some were torn apart by weapons that seemed to reach through space itself. Others simply stopped working as their systems were converted by the human drones. Intelligence Officer Seong-ho Lim monitored the Council communications. Admiral, enemy forces are requesting immediate evacuation. Several ships are preparing to self-destruct rather than be captured. Grant them safe passage, Admiral Choi ordered. We need witnesses to what happened here. The battle had lasted only 18 minutes. 212 of the Council's most advanced warships had been reduced to scrap metal and expanding gas clouds. The human fleet remained untouched, their dark hulls reflecting the light of burning alien vessels. But the humans weren't finished. Aboard Indomitable Spirit, Admiral Choi activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice was broadcast to every surviving Council ship, every space station in the system, every world within 100 light-years. To all Council forces and member worlds, he began. What you have witnessed today is the end of an era. For 3,000 years, your empire has ruled through fear and superior technology. Today, you have learned that there is always someone stronger. Someone smarter, someone more determined. He paused, letting his words sink in. The human defense fleet claims this system and all surrounding space under the ancient right of conquest. Any Council vessel that remains in human territory after the next 24 hours will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Admiral Veltros, his flagship dying around him, managed one last transmission. This isn't over, human. The Council has resources you can't imagine, allies across the galaxy. We will return with everything we have. Admiral Choi's reply was simple and final. We're counting on it. As the survivors of the Council fleet limped away through hyperspace, they carried with them the news that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. The age of Council supremacy was over. The age of humanity had begun. And somewhere in the depths of space, ancient powers that had slept for millennia began to stir, curious about these new players who had changed the rules of the game so completely. The Council station around Valros Prime had become a place of chaos and despair. Speaker Velthar stood in the main assembly hall, looking out at empty chairs where proud delegates had sat just days before. Most had fled when news of the fleet's destruction reached them. Others huddled in their quarters, too afraid to show their faces. The few remaining Council members whispered among themselves in languages filled with fear. The Catherian Empire, which had led the Council for 1,000 years, was already recalling its ships from distant sectors. The crystal beings from Andromeda had simply vanished, leaving no trace they had ever been part of the Alliance. High Commander Zekmoth limped into the hall, his metal armor cracked and scarred from his escape pod's rough landing on the station. He had been one of the few survivors from the first battle, and his red eyes now showed something they had never held before. Defeat. Speaker, he said, his voice hollow. We've received a transmission from the human fleet. They're sending a representative to discuss terms. Terms? Velthar's purple skin had faded to a sickly gray. We don't negotiate with primitives. They're not primitives, Zekmoth replied quietly. Whatever they are, they're far beyond anything we understood. Our entire military doctrine is useless against them. A new voice echoed through the hall, calm and professional. That's because your military doctrine was designed to fight enemies using technology you understood. The council members turned to see a human walking through the main entrance. He wore a simple uniform without decoration, and his face showed no triumph or anger, just the patient expression of someone conducting necessary business. I am Intelligence Officer Shung-Ho Lim, representing Admiral Taehyun Choi and the Human Defense Fleet. I'm here to discuss the transfer of authority in this sector. Transfer? Velthar found his voice at last. The Council does not surrender to anyone, especially not to a species that has been in space for barely 2 centuries. Shung-Ho smiled slightly. That's the first mistake in your thinking, Speaker. You assume we've only been in space for 2 centuries. You assume we developed all this technology ourselves. You assume many things that are wrong. He activated a small device that projected a hologram into the center of the hall. The image showed not human ships, but something far more ancient and beautiful. Vessels that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight floated in perfect formations. The Forerunners, whispered High Commander Zekmoth, but they've been extinct for 50,000 years. Extinct is not the right word, Shung-Ho replied. Hidden would be more accurate. They've been watching the younger races, waiting to see which ones might be worthy of their knowledge. The hologram changed to show human scientists working alongside beings of pure energy, advanced laboratories where impossible technologies were being developed, space stations that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. For the past 50 years, humanity has been in contact with the Forerunners, not as conquerors or overlords, but as teachers and students. They found something in us that interested them. What? Velthar demanded. What could primitives like you possibly offer to beings of such power? Potential, Shung-Ho said simply. The Forerunners ruled this galaxy once, just as you did. But they learned that ruling through force creates only fear and resentment. They withdrew from galactic affairs to let younger races find their own way. He gestured to the hologram, which now showed the history of the galaxy over the past 3,000 years. The rise of the Council, their conquests, their treatment of subject species. They watched you build an empire based on superiority and domination. They watched you suppress other species, steal their technology, and claim credit for discoveries you didn't make. They decided that your time was over. The hologram shifted again, showing human ships in their early primitive form. Then it showed the gradual changes as human technology advanced far beyond what should have been possible. But why humans? Asked a delegate who looked like a walking tree. Why not one of the older species? The Vegan Confederation has been in space longer. The Silicon Lords of Rigel have greater natural intelligence. Because, Shung-Ho replied, humanity showed something the others didn't. When we encountered other species, we didn't try to conquer them or claim superiority. We tried to learn from them, to understand them, to find common ground. The hologram now showed human diplomats working with dozens of alien species, trade agreements that benefited both sides, cultural exchanges that enriched everyone involved. Military alliances formed for mutual protection rather than conquest. The Forerunners tested us in ways we didn't even realize. They presented us with opportunities to dominate weaker species, to claim resources that weren't ours, to build an empire like yours. We chose differently. Speaker Velthar sank into his floating chair, the weight of understanding finally settling on him. So this was all planned. Our defeat, our humiliation, the end of everything we built? No, Shung-Ho said, and for the first time his voice held compassion. You chose this path yourselves. The Forerunners simply gave humanity the tools to respond when you threatened innocent people. If you had chosen peace, if you had offered partnership instead of domination, none of this would have been necessary. High Commander Zekmoth looked up from his cracked armor. What happens now? Do you execute us? Enslave our worlds? Turn us into vassals like we did to others? That's the second mistake in your thinking, Shung-Ho replied. You assume we want to rule like you did. We don't. He activated his communicator and Admiral Choi's voice filled the hall. Speaker Velthar, High Commander Zekmoth, honorable delegates. The Human Defense Fleet has no interest in conquering your worlds or enslaving your people. What we want is simple. The end of the tribute system, the release of all subjugated species, and the establishment of a true galactic community based on equality and mutual respect. The hologram changed one final time, showing a vision of the galaxy's future. Hundreds of species working together, sharing knowledge and resources. Trade routes that enriched everyone. Defense fleets that protected the weak instead of serving the strong. Those who wish to join this new community are welcome, Admiral Choi continued. Those who prefer isolation may withdraw to their home systems, but the age of empires built on conquest and domination is over. As he spoke, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. The subjugated worlds of the Council were declaring independence. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were reclaiming their freedom. Ancient civilizations that had hidden from Council oppression were emerging from the shadows. The Andromedan refugees are requesting permission to return to their homeworld, reported cultural advisor He Young-shin from the human fleet. The Silicon Lords want to establish formal diplomatic relations. The tree people of Vega are offering to share their agricultural technology. Speaker Velthar watched his empire crumble in real time, but strangely he didn't feel the anger he expected. Instead, he felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: relief. What about us? He asked quietly. The Catherians, the crystal beings, all the species that supported the Council. What's our place in this new galaxy? Sung-ho's answer surprised him. The same as everyone else's. You'll be judged by your actions going forward, not your past mistakes. The Forerunners believe in redemption and second chances. They've seen species change before. Diplomatic attaché So Young-baek stepped forward. We're prepared to offer the former Council species full membership in the new galactic community. Your knowledge, your culture, your perspectives are valuable. The only requirement is that you treat others as equals. Over the following weeks, the transformation was remarkable. Species that had been enemies for millennia began working together. Technologies that had been hoarded by the Council were shared freely. The galaxy that had been divided by fear and conquest began to unite through cooperation and mutual benefit. Forerunner Liaison Specialist Chang Min-yu worked with scientists from dozens of worlds, sharing knowledge that had been hidden for 50,000 years. The crystal beings who had seemed so cold and alien revealed themselves to be artists and philosophers. The Silicon Lords turned out to be natural engineers who could solve problems no organic mind could handle. Even High Commander Zekmoth found a new purpose. His military expertise, once used for conquest, was redirected toward defense and peacekeeping. Former enemies became allies as they faced common threats from the unexplored regions beyond the galaxy. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in humanity itself. Having achieved their victory, they didn't become conquerors. Instead, they became teachers, diplomats, and guardians. The power that could have made them the galaxy's new overlords was used to ensure that no species would ever dominate others again. Ambassador Sujin Park, standing on the observation deck of the reformed Council station, watched ships from 100 worlds working together to build something new. Human vessels worked alongside former enemies, sharing technology and knowledge that would benefit everyone. It's beautiful, she said to Captain Hyunwoo Kim, who had joined her at the viewport. It's what we always hoped for, he replied. A galaxy where strength is used to protect the weak, not exploit them. Where differences are celebrated, not suppressed in the depths of space, the Forerunners watched with satisfaction.